There was a time a fire came close to the farm and they were evacuating, and the little girl prayed and prayed that the farm would be spared. And it was. Mama Skinner had always told her that God will be near when you need God. And she always remembered to thank God when she felt her prayers were answered. The little girl and her brother were pretty content on that farm until the day that everything changed. And that day arrived when her mother's sister and husband, who they had never met, came to take them to California to live with them. And as the little girl left the big oak for the final time, tears flowed from her eyes, knowing that she would never see that tree again, or the farm, or Mama Skinner, or Papa Lou. And little did they realize that the life that was awaiting them would be filled with heartache and terror. It was the second day of their trip when the little girl asked an innocent question of her aunt. And the next thing she knew, she was backhanded across the face by her aunt. She had never, ever experienced anything like that in her 6 short years. But it was a foretaste of what their life would be like for the next several years. The little girl and her brother experienced unbelievable physical, emotional, and mental abuse over the next several years. They were treated as slaves in that home. They had to do all the chores, even sometimes having to scrub the bathroom floor with a toothbrush. And yes, several times they ran away, only to be cajoled back by their uncle, or sometimes returned by the police, who told them, well, if you just behave, this wouldn't happen. Remember, this is in the early 60s, when we didn't think of things like that, when authorities weren't trained to look for that. At one point, other relatives, including their grandmother, attempted to gain custody of the 2 children, only to have the court decide that the grandmother was too elderly to care for both of them. The little girl was now a teenager, and she was granted the opportunity to stay with her grandmother while her brother would be sent back to his abusive aunt and uncle. Well, the girl would not hear of leaving her brother there alone, and voluntarily went back to her aunt and uncle's house to protect her brother in whatever way she could. But that wasn't always possible. One time he was so severely beaten that he had to crawl to his room, and he stayed in bed for several days. The beatings continued on both of them by both their aunt and their uncle, until the day of the girl's 18th birthday, when her aunt literally threw her out of the house because she was no longer going to receive state aid to take care of her. So her brother now had to fend for himself. And not only was he abused at home, but he was constantly defending himself among his peers. He learned quickly how to fight, figuring none of the kids could hit him as hard as his uncle, which earned him a respect he hadn't anticipated. Eventually, when he was 16, as he took his last beating from his aunt, he